You are now listening to the Local Anxiety Podcast. My name is James Kasha, and on this week's episode, we talk about the importance of making people laugh. I had a blast on this one. I mean, it was all over the place. It was scattered. It was random, but it was truthful. And that's my truth. Hope you guys all get a little laugh out of this one, and enjoy. All right, let's roll right into this one. This one's going to be off the cuff. Not a lot of structure, not like the other ones had much, but it had a little bit of structure to them. I'm going to talk about the importance of making people laugh and why I'm so obsessed with humor. First, let's just start off with some of my major influences. I mean, anybody that's known me for more than 10 minutes, I'm already telling you all this anyway, but I might as well just get it into a recording form. Bill Murray, of course, Jim Carrey, Chris Farley, Don Rickles. Those are just to name a few off the top of my head that were just kind of bouncing around in there that I just needed to get out there. I'm sure I'm going to miss some in here, but it doesn't matter. This is all about just being in the moment in this episode and just gushing on why I love making people laugh. And let's just go. So let's take you right back to one of the most prominent memories that I still vividly have of when I became obsessed with laughing and trying to make people laugh. And my main influence is Bill Murray. I still remember being 4 years old and watching Ghostbusters for the first time. Now, that being said, a lot of the humor in there was definitely way over my head, but there was a lot of stuff in there that was pretty plain as day that anybody can laugh at. Now, there's one particular scene that always resonates with me whenever I look back and think back to the origins of when the seed was planted in my brain. That I wanted to be funny. I wanted to be like that guy. Bill Murray was and still is a legend in comedy and movies. He has this confidence that is just so amazing. It draws you in and makes you want to be either around that guy or be that guy. To me, that was the latter. I wanted to be that guy. I wanted to have that confidence. Now, as a 4-year-old, you may think, well, that's a little young to know that, but I saw something special that still resonates to me to this day. And I'll break it down. It's something so simple as a scene in a movie that was able to plant a seed. It was in Ghostbusters, the original. So it was right at the beginning of the film, a little bit, probably about maybe 15, 20 minutes in. The guys were called to a library to investigate a ghost. Now, the other two members were very excited and were totally into this concept. But Bill Murray's character, Peter Venkman, was more of a, yeah, whatever kind of guy. Like, we'll see it if it's actually true, you know. He was pretty much doubting it and had this confidence to walk in like, well, this is a bunch of BS, right? Like, well, I don't think he knew he didn't believe in ghosts. So right away they enter this basement floor of this library, and they're walking through, and they come across this mucus-looking stuff that's kind of spread all over the cabinets and different cue cards. And in the film, obviously, they reference it as ectoplasm. It's when a ghost has been there, they leave a residue. So one of the other characters, played by Harold Ramis, turns to Bill's character and says, "Venkman, get me a sample of this." Now, clearly we all saw it. It looks pretty nasty. And his response was, "Somebody blows their nose and you want to keep it?" Like right away, okay, yeah, that's funny. What he proceeds to do is to take a kind of like a cup and starts to kind of try and scoop it up and put it in this cup. And it gets it gets on his hands, and then he accidentally rubs his face, and there's just these noises that he makes. It's like but it's this physical comedy mixed with this not taking things serious, never taking things too serious, always kind of being silly and light. And that scene to me has been burned into my mind of, in any scenario, this guy's funny. This guy can be funny. And I always wanted that. I craved it. I become obsessed with it, wanting to be funny all the time, mimicking different things that he did or anybody else did. So he was definitely one of my most earliest influences. And as a kid, I liked to do a lot of impressions. So when it came to that, the next person up would be Jim Carrey. I mean, this is around the time The Mask came out, Ace Ventura came out, and I would proceed to relentlessly, obnoxiously torment my family with impressions all the time. Of course, I had to be just like them. I had to recreate all my favorite scenes because I wanted a reaction. I craved the reaction. And so I don't want to get too dark with this, but there's truth to it. I mean, it came down to being raised in an abusive home. I needed an outlet. I needed something that I can feel good from. So I always knew that I could be silly and try and make someone laugh, and that gave me that like, oh wait, I am something. I'm not just a piece of crap. The way I felt about myself, there was like those sunshine moments of like, oh, a part in the clouds. Like, oh, this person like got a reaction. I got a reaction out of them, and it's a positive one. And so, because of the abuse, the verbal abuse, I developed my defense mechanism from it, which is to always assume that someone's going to say something horrible to me. Now, as bad as it sounds, understand that I've turned that into something I can use for fun and for humor. So when I meet someone or I'm talking to somebody, my brain will kind of start thinking, okay, well, when's the insult coming? When are they going to say something horrendous to me? So I start already thinking of things about myself. So next I'm going to take you to when I discovered that I actually was funny, or that I could make people laugh. Because before I didn't believe it. I was always insecure with it, thinking, oh, you're just doing me a favor by laughing or whatever, or I'm not funny. And it just so happened to happen in a church setting. I was really young at this point. I was probably about 12 at this point, early teens. And I always struggled with my confidence. So as I was hitting that awkward puberty stage, I became very, very, very shy, like way more shy than usual. And so I wouldn't really kind of use any of my humor. I would be very nervous around people. But it was when I joined this youth group, I felt a little bit more comfortable with them. And usually I was always a loner and didn't really have any friends, and no one really understood me. But in these brief moments during hanging out with some of these kids, I felt comfortable. And when I felt comfortable, I started to see myself and feel myself letting go of the mental game that I played. And so as I was relaxed, I started to take in the room, take in details about people and either their face or their body language or their tone of voice or clothes, anything that they did that I would reflect on myself. So my defense kicked up in a fun way. I was able to turn the pendulum to them and then put myself in their shoes and learn to make fun of them as if I'm making fun of myself. It's hard to explain, but I'll never forget this. Like I was able to start just joking around with people, kind of like roasting them a little bit, in a very fun way, because it was very innocent, and it was almost like I was shocked of what was coming out of my own mouth. I was like, where did that come from? And and everybody seemed to laugh. Like everybody was laughing. I don't remember entirely the details, but this one kid had braces, and we're all sitting on this couch, right? And I was already cracking jokes, so they were already kind of like pretending to beat me up a little bit, And obviously the teacher was like, okay, you guys need to calm down a little bit, right? And the kid with the braces was like, all right, I'll stop, right? And then I kind of flinched because I thought he was going to get me again, right? And so, what, you don't trust me? It's like, no, I don't trust you. I can see it in your teeth. It was like this horrible joke, because it's like I'm pointing right at his braces, like the whole thing. Like, but it was something that felt so natural, and I was so comfortable in the moment that when the laughter came after that, like, oh my God, I can't even explain to you how good that felt. Of this validation that kind of just washed over us. Like, I made a joke off the cuff, people laughed, and it felt so natural because I was so comfortable. And so that's something I tried to ride for a long time, was to find that comfortable space, find people I could be comfortable enough with to either try out my jokes or whatever. And in the pursuit of that, it wasn't always the best. Because then obviously when you get some form of validation, you want to chase that dragon, so to speak. So it became about just saying horrible, nasty things to people. And I had to learn the hard way a few times as to being like, oh, okay, well, you just don't need to be mean. You're hurting people's feelings. But I became obsessed with it. I needed that. I needed to chase that. And over years, I had to learn to obviously be more sensitive and understand that when I'm pointing it at me, that's fine. So, jumping around, because this is going to be all kind of scattered, I just want to tell some fun stories, like maybe some fun interactions where I got to see some of my other favorite comedians. Like, I'll give you an example. One of my other favorite comedians is Bobby Lee. He's a Korean American comic, and he was on the show Mad TV. And I'll never forget him, because when Mad TV came on, he was one of the only Asian Americans that was performing in a comedy sketch show that I've ever seen. It was like, oh, whoa, this is so new. It's so exciting. And he was absolutely hilarious. He's a genius. Just a comedic genius. The timing, everything about him was so cool. And then he would later go on to perform in some movies. And the other one that really solidified me was a movie called Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle. And he had this bit role, and that was just, unbelievable, right? Unbelievable. It's very, very funny. I'd highly recommend you guys go check that movie out. It's a little bit on the vulgar side, just to kind of give you that heads up, but that's the type of humor that I like. And so years go by. I don't even hear about this guy anymore. It was like well over a decade I didn't hear his name. Then all of a sudden he created this podcast, and I was like, oh, well, I'm definitely into podcasts, so I'll just give it a shot. And then it was like, oh my God, the floodgates opened up. This guy is, not only is he still funny, he's funnier than ever. Now he's on a platform where it's free reign. No networks, no one telling what he can and cannot do. This is just full-blown Bobby Lee. And so that being said, he started to tour again. And he was getting more momentum from it. I mean, he was always touring, but it wasn't the same. But the podcast put him back on the map. And so he came to Vancouver. And I was like, oh, I'm definitely going. So I went by myself, and I remember getting to the club super early. super, super early, like probably about 3 hours, maybe even before it even opened. And I remember it was on this cold, like winter day. It was raining and just super cold and miserable. And I stood outside that club because it was like a first come first serve seating, which was awesome. I think it was at the I can't Just for Laughs. It was Just for Laughs in downtown Vancouver. And so anyway, I'm waiting outside and waiting to get in, just anxiously waiting. And finally, the time's up. I got front row in this smaller club. Literally, I was like feet away from the comics, all these other comics that were going up. And Bobby, of course, was the headliner. So here comes out Bobby Lee. He's a little guy. He's like 5'4". And the crazy part about it is like I was so close to the stage, I just saw the stairs they would walk up to. And I got to see him in the wings waiting to go up. And I was like literally 3 or 4 feet away from him. I was like, this is just amazing, right? It just blew my mind. And so I've never seen him perform live before. I've seen maybe some bit of clips online, but never really did him his full justice. So he jumped up on stage, super high energy, right? Just genius right off the bat, like unbelievably funny. And he starts to doing some crowd work. And so I'm in the front row, and actually I'm missing a spot. Like literally as soon as he jumped up on stage, the excitement, I was so excited when I saw him. He turned to the crowd and he immediately came over to me and he gave me a fist pump. And I was like, oh my God, right? Like, holy crap, he's giving me a fist pump. That's awesome, right? It was such a crazy cool moment. But then seconds later, he had his hand down his pants and then he pulled it out and literally rubbed it down the next guy to me's face. I don't know if you guys have ever seen Face Off, but there's this stupid thing that John Travolta does where he just rubs his hand down from the forehead down to the chin. Obviously, you can't do that anymore, COVID, right? But like, and I'm thinking like, thank God that wasn't me, man. Like, as much as I was a fan of him, I don't think I would be totally cool with that. So anyway, the whole night was great. I mean, he killed it. It was unbelievable. I was so blessed to be able to see him live, because now in the new world we're living in, who knows when comedy's going to start coming back, or even if he's going to tour again. But I'm really hoping so. But that being said, I mean, at least I got that experience with him, and that was very magical. So I want to jump into another influence that came in later in my life. Obviously, it was someone that I kind of recognized before, but he's a much older comedian. Goes by the name of Don Rickles, Mr. Warmth, also known as. Now, Mr. Warmth there was a legend on the Johnny Carson show. He would show up and just roast everybody. This was the original roast master general. Now, yeah, Jeff Ross currently holds that title now, but Don was the legend. And the first time I heard of Don Rickles actually was from Toy Story. He played the piggy bank. I can't remember. Mr. Potato Head. He's Mr. Potato Head, right? And so I got introduced to him through just clips of the Johnny Carson show. And that to me spoke to me on so many levels of just that roasting thing where he would just pick apart things that he saw instantly on the spot. I mean, just on such a high level, like the highest level you can imagine. This guy had that gift. And the thing was so unique about him, as offensive as he may come across, at the end of these huge tirades that he'd go on, he'd always have this really sentimental, loving thing to say after he just tore you apart. I was like, this guy's unique, man. There's something super special about him. So that being said, I heard he was coming to do a show in Seattle, which is just the state I'm under. Like, I'm above, actually. I'm in Canada here. And it's only like about a 3 or 4 hour drive away. So I told my mom about it, and we made a trip down, and I got to see Don Rickles perform live. And this was near the end of his life, right? He was, I think, almost 90 or 91 at this point. But that was like a bucket list for me, to go see a legend like him perform. What a blessing to be able to see him. And so, continue on. There's some other comics that I can talk about, but these guys, to me, when I hear them talk on podcasts, I just relate to them so much, because most of them come from broken homes or have some form of abuse in their life or something horrible happen. Not all of them, but let's just admit, the greats. The greats come from pain. Comedy, the best comedy comes from pain. And the best way to describe it is that I can use my pain as a gift. If I can make you laugh, or I made you laugh before, there's no greater feeling for me. I love it. I am obsessed with it. I chase that, like I said. And so these guys are doing the same thing, but they're doing it on a higher level, obviously. They want to make a living out of it. For me personally, I mean, I think when I was younger, I had dreams of wanting to become a stand-up comedian. But later on, I realized that, no, it's either not in the cards, or it's not something I'm meant to do. I think using my gift on a day-to-day basis is good enough for me, right? That's the kind of benefit I get to have, is when I get to interact with people out there, and within a few seconds, kind of getting to know them a little bit, and maybe throwing a little bit of jokes in there, and even if I get a smile, that's good enough for me. And so, that being said, I mean, I think I want to wrap this up and just say this was a random episode. I mean, it's kind of not really well structured, but it's something that I'm very passionate about. And comedy to me is still very important to this day. I love to laugh. I love to make others laugh. And let's just keep laughing. And just like that, I've used up all my words for the week. Hope you guys enjoyed this week's episode. And if you want to help the show, just head on over to YouTube and hit subscribe, like, and comment. Thank you.